All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 129. Damn, been doing this for a little while. So, today we need to talk about some drama. I need a drink first. First things first, I'm going to do this a little bit at the beginning of all my vlogs. Go watch Essential Lessons 20. It's my new series talking about how to play specific, or how to use specific features in the Essence 20 system. I'm really proud of it. Done. So, I recently watched a video on Crispy's Tavern. Anyone that is not aware, Crispy's Tavern is a D&D Horror Stories YouTube channel that I really enjoy. There's quite a few different D&D horror or RPG Horror Stories YouTube channels that exist, and Crispy's is my favorite. He's a cool dude. He's got a really nice format that is really entertaining. And like the videos themselves are really polished. He puts little fun skits in there every so often. And for the most part, a lot of the stuff that he says, I tend to agree with, as far as like he'll give advice on, you know, what you shouldn't have done in this situation, or ways to kind of notice red flags and stuff like that. And for the most part, I tend to agree with a lot of his analyses, not all of them. So today, he made a video because, as is always how things work in the world of Critical Role, there's a little bit of drama going on in Critical Role, specifically around Abria, who, if you don't know, Abria is she's a voice actress, if I remember correctly. You know, before I say all the wrong things, I'm actually going to look this up. So Abria, there we go. So I guess she's not a voice actor. She does a lot of stuff with. If I go to her Wikipedia page, Abria Iyengar, which I'm probably butchering her last name, and I sincerely apologize if I am, is an American web series actress known primarily for tabletop role-playing game anthologies, streams, and podcasts. So she's a live player, is what she is. And she's shown up on Critical Role a few times. She's done a lot of work with Dimension 20. She's GM'd a couple campaigns for them. She is the dungeon master for Exandria Unlimited, which is basically kind of this spin-off series of the main Critical Role campaign 3. There have been issues with her DMing style before. I think I made a video talking about how, specifically in relation to, I think it was Amy. I'm going to see if I can look up the cast here real quick. Do we not have... It says casting, but it doesn't actually give me where. Here we go. So, Amy Carrero, I believe, was the one that got quote unquote in trouble, or was the one that was in trouble. But basically, Abria seems to have a very kind of aggressive, confrontational DM style, which I don't want to be the person that says your fun is wrong. There are a lot of people I know that enjoy a more adversarial relationship with the DM, where they're trying to kind of one-up the DM, and the DM is basically trying to one-up the players. And I've seen this particular style of play work really, really well. However, the only place I have ever seen that style of play work well is when you have a very experienced dungeon master playing with a group of very experienced players, because you're basically playing hard mode D&D. or hard mode RPGs, whatever system you want to use, because the point of a tabletop role playing game, I've heard people go on huge diatribes around this idea, but the basic idea of a tabletop role playing game is you have a bunch of people getting together using an agreed upon rule system to tell stories. And one member of that group is meant to provide challenges for the other members of the group to overcome. But the point is to tell interesting stories and have fun. Sometimes those interesting stories are entirely about cool battles that happened. For more kind of combat focused RPGs, and especially if you look at like early D&D, it was significantly more combat focused. But they were still telling really interesting, cool stories. If you've gotten to the point where telling cool stories is no longer particularly challenging to you, you can create a kind of subset where we're going to tell cool stories by the fact that the DM is going to be trying to end the story, and the players are going to be doing everything they can to keep the story going in spite of that. And that, again, can be a really fun style. But again, it's only fun when, first of all, everybody is in on it, and when they all understand the system well enough to be able to contribute. It's never fun to be the person that jumps into like a ranked League of Legends match and then watches as everyone else does everything right and you just continue to die to I can't remember what it's called now, forest mobs and minions and stuff like that, because you don't understand how the game is played. So let's talk about exactly what the drama is this time. And I'm going to say there are going to be spoilers about the most recent, a couple of the most recent Critical Role episodes. So if you're trying to avoid spoilers, probably avoid the rest of this vlog, simply because in order for me to talk about what happened, I have to go into pretty important plot details. Because without that context, this isn't going to make a whole lot of sense. So this is your fair warning. This is going to contain spoilers. So that being said, the spoilers start here. Abria, again, is the dungeon master for Exandria Unlimited. And after a situation that happened in the main Critical Role game, where, spoiler alert, Fresh Cut Grass, which was the robotic cleric character that was played by Sam Riegel, they got into a combat with a really, really powerful enemy that, my understanding, I've not been watching Critical Role Campaign 3 since like the first like 3 or 4 episodes. It was just a little bit too chaotic for me, and my brain just didn't let me, especially since a lot of the episodes are like 5 hours long. My brain won't let me sit down for 5 hours and watch anything. So Sam Riegel's been playing that character entirely, and the big baddie they were fighting, they've apparently fought before, and they've just never been able to kill it, and it keeps they kept coming back and causing issues, and there came a point where the party was in dire straits, and it was looking like things were going to be going poorly for the party, and I don't know the entirety of the context of what happened. But there was a point where Fresh Cut Grass had the opportunity to basically sacrifice himself to save the rest of the party. That's what he did. He basically blew himself up so that he could take the bad guy with him. And it ended up working. And it was a really touching moment, and it was really, really crazy, but that also meant that Sam Riegel could no longer play with the rest of the group because his character wasn't just unconscious or dead. His character ceased to exist. There's no resurrection happening. Fresh Cut Grass is gone. So what ended up happening was, I don't know if it was the next week or the week after, instead of running a normal Critical Role session, they actually brought back Abria and the Exandria Unlimited cast, which include Dorian, who, what's his name? Robbie Damon played an Air Genasi bard named Dorian Storm. And in the beginning of Campaign 3, he actually was a member of the main cast of Critical Role for a little while. And then he went off to go back to his little group of friends, and they're called, I think they're called the Crown Keepers or something similar to that. Whereas the main Critical Role cast, their adventuring party is called Bell's Hells. So now that the main Critical Role cast is down a cast member, instead of running another Critical Role game, they went back to Exandria Unlimited, and they ran a session with Abria and the Exandria Unlimited cast, dealing with, because they both exist in the same world, and they're basically dealing with the repercussions of what Bell's Hells have been doing, is my understanding. Again, I haven't watched either episode. I've just read some synopses, and obviously the conversation around this particular topic required me to learn a little bit more. So during the game, I believe it was this past Thursday, so I don't even know what day that was. Last Thursday was the 2nd. I believe this happened on the 2nd. Feel free to correct me in the comments below if I get anything incorrect. They were playing the game, they were in combat, and combat in and of itself was kind of slogging along. Which combat can do that in D&D 5th edition if you have inexperienced players or an inexperienced DM. Combat in 5th edition can turn into a massive slog, especially if you're running high level content. I don't know what level the Exandria Unlimited people are, but due to the fact that eventually what happens is Dorian goes and joins Bell's Hells again for at least a limited amount of time, I would assume they're around the same level as Bell's Hells, which are getting into the kind of tier 3 area. So I don't know what their actual levels are. I think they're somewhere between like a level 11 and 13, somewhere in there. Again, it's been a while since I've paid attention to it. So yeah, combat can drag on a little bit. And Robbie Damon, playing Dorian, decides that he's going to cast a spell. The particular spell is Chromatic Orb. It's a really common, it's actually a really, really useful first level spell. And the thing that makes Chromatic Orb interesting is it's a single target spell, but when you cast the spell, the damage type that it does is not set. Like Firebolt does fire damage, or Thunder Wave does thunder damage, things like that. When you cast cast Chromatic Orb, you get to choose what kind of damage it does. And because of that, it's a remarkably useful spell for getting around resistances, and in the rare instance you're dealing with something that has a weakness. Weaknesses are really uncommon in 5th edition. It's one of the problems I have with the system. But if you are dealing with a creature that actually has a weakness to something, you can choose, you can't choose any damage type, but you have a limited number of choices of damage types, basically elemental damage types, that you can choose. One of those damage types is thunder damage. If you are unaware of what thunder damage is in D&D, it's basically a version of sonic damage. Thunder Wave, it uses sound to actually hurt people. So Robbie decides to cast a spell as his character Dorian. Cast a spell, he gets a really high roll, hits well. Rolls a decent amount of damage because I believe he upcast the spell, because Chromatic Orb is a first level spell. And he decides to do thunder damage to kind of go with the theme of his character. His character name is Dorian Storm. He's a bard, so he thought it would be apropos. Well, in the middle of the game, when this has never happened before, Abria decides that because he's doing thunder damage, she's decided that that means instead of just being a single target spell, it's going to do AoE damage. It is not uncommon for DMs to make kind of spur of the moment calls like that during a game for a number of reasons. I myself do it fairly often. It's one of the benefits of playing a TTRPG compared to like a video game. Because a video game can only do what has been programmed into it. Where a tabletop RPG, a player can go, hey, can I try doing this? And the DM can go, okay, I think it would work this way. And generally that's how it happens. Some RPGs strongly encourage that to happen. I've talked before about things like Powered by the Apocalypse, where the game is supposed to be a little bit more, especially in Essence 20, I guess would be a perfect example for this channel. In Essence 20, your roles are meant to be a little bit more of a kind of negotiation with the game master instead of a rigid, okay, if you want to do this, then you roll that. D&D tends to be a little bit closer to the more rigid, in order to do this, you roll this particular check. Essence 20, you're really kind of encouraged of, well, I have this specialization. Can I use this specialization? Okay, and because I'm doing this, can I get an upshift on this roll or something? Like all of that stuff is baked into Essence 20. It's not really there in D&D 5th edition. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that the rules require a little bit more of Dungeon Master intervention. So I'm not saying that changing the rules because of what the players are doing is somehow wrong or something like that. However, what specifically happened in this particular instance was Robbie made the attack roll, confirmed that it was a hit, rolled the damage, and then after all of that happened, then Abria went, you know what, we're going to say that this does area damage. So after all that happened and Robbie could no longer take the roll back, he had no idea that this was going to happen, they changed a single target spell into a area of effect spell. And the only reason that mattered, it wasn't that Robbie got to hit multiple targets. No. Dorian, Robbie's character, Dorian's brother was standing right next to the monster. And so because of this, instead of just hitting the bad guy, he also did significant amount of damage to his brother's character. Dorian, the character, Dorian's brother, not Robbie's brother. The character was an NPC. And later on in the combat, I believe like the next round, Dorian's brother's character dies. Partially because it took that additional damage. The damage itself didn't kill his brother, but the brother fell. And then for some reason that hasn't really been explained to me, when the brother's character is rolling death saves, he was rolling the death saves at disadvantage, which is not a thing in D&D. So it happens, Dorian's brother's character dies, and it's one of the motivations for Dorian to rejoin Bell's Hells for as long as he's going to be there. We don't know. And people had a lot to say about it, especially since later on in the episode, and I actually watched a clip of this. Now, the clip that I watched is taken out of context. It is literally just Robbie's line and then Abria's line. So it's possible that I'm not seeing the full context. But with what I have seen from Abrius thus far and from my own experience dealing with, for lack of a better term, bad managers, I'm relatively certain I kind of know what was going on. And that's what I want to talk about today. So Robbie asks Abria, okay, so what are the rules? Because obviously at that point, Robbie is at least getting minorly frustrated. And apparently, they went on Four Sided Dive, which is their after show talk show thing that they do on Tuesdays. Apparently, the cast of Exandria Unlimited was on there, and apparently they said, yeah, they were perfectly fine with everything that happened. So, as far as I can tell, there's no bad blood officially with the Exandria Unlimited KKKK cast. However, the response that Abria had is the issue that I had with this particular instance. So Robbie goes, okay, so what are the rules? And Abria turns to Robbie and says, you want to know what the rules are? The rules are whatever I say they are. And then she turns directly to the camera and says, so fuck you. And this is where I have a problem with this. And this is where a lot of the fan base started getting really, really mad at Abria. Because what she effectively did there is what's called pulling rank. And I've talked about this before in a business aspect. Pulling rank, the term itself comes from the military, and it's basically when you tell someone to do something, you say, I'm not going to do that. And so you go, yes, you are. My rank is higher than your rank. So because of that, you have to do what you are told. You don't have a say in this. This is an order. You are going to do this. And I've mentioned before, pulling rank only works in the military. And the reason why is in the military, if you disobey a direct order, the best thing that can happen to you is you will get a reprimand. More likely than not, you will have to go before a court-martial. And in extreme situations, you can either be imprisoned or outright just killed. If it's a situation where you are in battle, it is in the middle of a war, and you disobey a direct order that could possibly get your squad mates hurt and or killed, they can just end you right there. And they will, my very basic understanding of military law and everything, I believe that still would involve a court-martial and things like that for the person that executed this other soldier. But again, I could be wrong. Feel free to correct me. Anyone that actually understands military law better than I am. I have never served. Most of my family has, but I personally have not. I've never been involved in any of this. It's just my understanding from being very closely related to a lot of people who have served. Disobeying orders in the military is a really, really big deal. And more often than not, you're not going to be executed for it, but you can get everything from simply being put in jail, depending on how bad it is, or you can get what's called a dishonorable discharge, which is really bad because a dishonorable discharge removes some of your rights. If you are dishonorably discharged from the military, you can no longer own a firearm and you're no longer allowed to vote. Like, it's effectively a felony conviction. You become the equivalent of a felon. So it's a really, really big deal. Like I said, that's the only reason it works in the military, because there are serious consequences if you disobey a direct order. In business and literally everywhere else in the world where there is a ranking system, pulling rank does nothing but alienate your employees. Because the absolute worst thing can happen, that when you tell someone to do something, they go, no, and you go, I'm your manager, you're going to do what I tell you to do, is they might lose their job over it. And if it is a situation where the manager has to throw around their weight to get people to do what it is that they want them to do, it's probably not that good a job, to be blunt. And getting another job will probably not be that particularly difficult. Again, I ran into it most often in retail, where if you are just a regular rank and file retail employee, retail is retail is retail is retail is retail. If you quit working for an office supply company and then go work for a big box, home repair supply company, you're going to be doing the same thing for about the same pay. Not a whole lot changes, and it's not particularly difficult to get a new job in retail. If you're in management or anything like that, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But bare minimum, the people that are pulling rank are entry-level or mid-level managers in stores, and they're pulling rank on regular associates. And it just doesn't work. Now, when we go over to a tabletop RPG, pulling the line of I'm the DM and what I say goes, all that does is alienate your players. Because in this particular instance, what has happened is Robbie made a decision that made sense, and he knew the outcome of that decision. And then after he had made the decision, the DM decided that they were going to change how it worked and punish him for it. And the reason I say punish him is because the only additional effect that happened because of her changing how the rules work, seemingly on a whim, was that his character's brother got hurt and eventually died. There was no negative aspect for any of the bad guys. The only negative aspect, the only change that was made, was detrimental to Robbie personally. So in my mind, that was a punishment specifically targeting Robbie. And that's why I have an issue with this. Again, I don't have a problem with DMs making rulings on the fly or deciding, well, you know what, because of what's happening here, this is going to work a little bit differently. I do that constantly in my own game. But part of the social contract of playing a game that has specific rules is that if the rules are going to change, there's going to be a reason for them to change other than I want to punish you. There was really no way for Robbie to know that the decision he made was going to backfire so spectacularly. And it wasn't the idea of, well, he just didn't do enough homework or he ignored the signs. There were no signs. There was nothing. This was just a random rule change that had never been talked about, and there was no way to take back the action. The action had already happened, and then she just decided to tack on additional things. So that in and of itself is not an okay thing to do. And my personal theory as to why it happened was Abria had an idea of where she wanted the story to go, and she'd already decided that this NPC was going to die. And so this was just an easy way to ensure that his death happened. And to me, that is being a bad DM. I'm not saying that Abria is a bad DM. I'm saying that the choice that she made was a bad choice for a DM. Because again, it breaks that social contract. The idea that this is a group storytelling session and we're going to work together and use this rule system to help us tell a story. And the story may not always go the way that we want, but that's why we use the rules system. That's why we choose to use this one over any other one, because we've decided that this is going to be the thing that allows us to have unexpected things happen as part of the story. Because a story that has no twists or turns is kind of boring. And then she just magically changes it to ensure that the story that she wanted to tell gets told the way that she wanted it to tell. That's a breaking of the social contract. So that in and of itself is enough for me to go, okay, that was not okay, and that's something that needs to be fixed. However, when later on in the session, Robbie brings up a legitimate concern going, hey, I thought I understood, and I'm paraphrasing here, hey, I thought I understood how this game works. You've changed the rules. So I want to know what the new rules are so that I don't make another choice that ends up murdering someone my character cares about. And Abria's response was, fuck you, I can do what I want. That's not an okay response. That's pulling rank. Anytime I do something that seemingly breaks the rules of D&D, I will explain it to my characters in a way that my players in a way that their characters would understand. And there are some instances where I have to tell the players, they go, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And I go, you are absolutely right. It 100% doesn't make sense. And that's because your characters don't have the information to understand that. But the mere fact that it's not working the way it's supposed to is valuable information for the players. And it's valuable information for your characters. I'd love to explain more, but to be honest, you guys haven't discovered that part of the plot yet. So until your characters discover it, I can't explain why it happened. I can tell you there are rules. It followed those rules. And if you continue to investigate, you will learn those rules. That, to me, is a completely acceptable way to explain it. If it's something is like, you know what? Unfortunately, it's not something your characters are aware of. According to your characters, there's no way that should have happened. However, it did. To me, that's a perfectly legitimate explanation because it does two things. One, it goes, hey, I'm not cheating. There are actual rules that are going on here. And two, it gives the players the chance to go, oh, okay, I guess that means if I'm really upset about this and I really want to know what was going on, I can spend some of my time in game trying to figure out what happened. And maybe once I figure out why it happened, I can use it to my advantage next time. That is incentivizing the players to get more invested in the story, and it gives them the opportunity to use the same thing that was detrimental to them to be detrimental to the enemy later on. Saying, you know, it happened because I'm the DM and fuck you. That's not okay, because now you've basically said it doesn't really matter what you do. If I decide that I want the story to go a different way, I'm just going to throw away the social contract and I'm going to change the rules so I get the outcome that I want at the expense of you getting the outcome that you want. Now this is no longer a group storytelling session. This is one person dictating a story to other people. And when they don't follow, when they don't do what they are told, they are punished. That's not okay. Now, I have heard absolutely wonderful things about Abria. Again, she's run quite a few. I think she's run like 2 different campaigns for Dropout, which is the College Humor premium site. And that's where Dimension 20 puts all of their campaigns. I have heard wonderful things about what she does when she runs things for Dimension 20 and how everybody loves that. And again, according to the 4-sided dive, everyone was, all the players were super happy with how it ended. I personally call bullshit on that. It's possible that by the end, because again, I have seen exactly like 30 seconds of this episode. And it's a long episode. It's like a 4-hour episode. So 30 seconds of an episode is not nearly enough for me to understand everything that was good going on. Even listening to recaps and stuff like that, I cannot understand everything that's going on. So maybe by the end of this, or maybe even after it was over, Aubrey kind of sat down with them and actually explained everything that was going on when she wasn't on camera. There's a lot of things that I don't know could have happened. And I think it's very, very possible that by the time they recorded 4-sided dive, that they had kind of gotten over any of the initial anger and stuff like that and gone, okay, no, I understand why you did it and I'm perfectly fine with it now. In the moment, like, again, I am a kind of natural lie detector. I'm extremely empathetic. I am borderline empathic. I'm that good at reading people that a lot of times I can feel other people's emotions because I'm just really good at feeling or at reading people. Robbie was not happy when he asked that question. Body language, tone of voice, micro expressions, he wasn't particularly fond of it. I'm not saying that he was super, super pissed or anything like that, but he was obviously upset. And then when Abria responded to him with, I never saw his reaction to that, so I don't know how he reacted. But Abria responding it with, I'm the DM, that's why, and then turning to camera and saying, fuck you. The fuck you was not meant towards Robbie. The fuck you was meant towards the Critical Role fan base. If anyone's unaware, critters are rabid. And something that used to happen in Critical Role, it's been happening with Critical Role since probably like the second or third session. Or even the first section, actually, I remember specifically, is rules lawyers love Critical Role. And they love to point out how everything is so wrong. I remember specifically during the first Critical Role session ever, Matt had already explained at the beginning, hey, we're running this in 5th edition. Most of us have never played 5th edition or have only played it a little bit. We're used to playing Pathfinder, so we're going to get things wrong. And we've modified 5th edition so that our Pathfinder characters can exist in 5th edition. Specifically, he made a gunslinger subclass for the fighter so that Percy's gunslinger character, or for Talison's gunslinger character Percy, could still exist. So while they were playing, there would be rules questions, and Matt would invariably go, you know what, I'm not 100% certain, and he'd take out the PHB and start looking through it to try and figure out what the rule was. Well, because we had a bunch of people that were really familiar with 5th edition in comments, we would all start typing, oh, it's this way. This is how it works in 5th edition. And eventually Matt had to kind of stop the stream and go, hey, I understand you're trying to help, but I'm the one that's running this game, not you. And I'm going to make the rulings that I want to make. And he wasn't mean about it. He wasn't like chastising us. He was simply kind of setting up a boundary. He was just setting a boundary and saying, listen, I'm going to run this the way that I think that it should be run. And we're really happy to have you guys here. And we're happy that you know the system really well. But we're going to run it the way that I think it should be run. And it was perfectly fine. He didn't say, fuck you. He just said, hey, I'm going to run this. I'm running the game. And that is a completely legitimate thing to say. That is a very common thing to do in management if you have unruly employees that are constantly arguing with you. I myself have had this conversation with an employee where they go, well, why can't I do this? I go, because this is the way that it needs to be done. Well, I don't agree with that. And I go, that's perfectly fine. However, I am the person that is currently in charge. I have made the decision that this is what we're going to do. I have explained as much as I am willing to explain to you right now as to why. The fact of the matter is, I have a time limit. I have a limited amount of time that I'm allowed to be here because the longer I keep you guys here, the more money you cost us. So this is how it's going to be. I've made a decision. This is where it's going to go. If you don't like that decision, that's perfectly fine. You are more than welcome to complain to my boss about it. You're more than welcome to leave. You do not have to be here. However, this is the decision that I've made, and this is the way we are going to move forward for right now. I take full responsibility for anything that happens because of it. You will not get in trouble for doing this in any way, shape, or form. This is all on me. That is a perfectly legitimate thing to say. What is not a perfectly legitimate thing to say is, because I said so, fuck you. I completely understand the mindset that would cause her to do that. Aubrey has been attacked before. Again, there was a situation where she seemed to be specifically picking on Amy for some odd reason. And she was very aggressive towards Amy specifically. And Amy was a brand new player. She had never played before. And so it felt like, from an audience perspective, it felt like Aubrey was just attacking Amy for not knowing how to play the game, which is a dick move. I don't think that's what was happening. I think Abria is just not very good at taking pushback. The stuff that she's run for Dimension 20, my understanding has been it's been much more kind of narrative focused gameplay where the Dungeon Master has significantly more power and control and therefore doesn't really have to explain and learn all these different rules and things like that. It doesn't really have to deal with rules lawyers, where D&D has a lot more rules, intentionally. I've mentioned before, I tend to prefer a rules light giggy game, but I still play D&D 5th edition. I still have fun playing D&D 5th edition, and every so often I like to play a little more rules heavy game because I know how things are going to work. The rules are there on purpose, for lack of a better phrase. They're there on purpose. And I don't think Abria deals well when people challenge her rulings, because I don't think she knows the 5th edition rule set particularly well. I don't think she's completely inept or anything like that, but there's a lot of different things. And again, 5th edition is relatively rules light when you compare it to something like Pathfinder 2nd edition or GURPS. So it's not like 5th edition is an incredibly rules heavy, crunchy system, but it's existed for a decade. And most of the time when there are unclear aspects of the game, like when there's some vague wording on things, those things have been ruled by the game's creators, either through things like Unearthed Arcana, or just through Twitter and stuff like that, where like Crawford would go, hey, this is how it works, or Perkins would go, hey, this is how it works. So there's not a ton of wiggle room in D&D 5th edition anymore. It has existed long enough that most of the wiggle room has been explained away, and anywhere where there is wiggle room, it is intentionally left up to the dungeon master. It's left up to the dungeon master on purpose, specifically for the purpose of allowing the player characters to be as creative as possible with it. And in this particular instance, Chromatic Orb doesn't have wiggle room in how the spell is worded. So she made a decision that I believe was the wrong decision. I don't think, based on everything I know of the situation, I don't think her ruling was justified in anything other than I want to either kill that character or I want to punish the players. And neither of those are a justifiable reason to do something. I have had characters that my intention, if things went the way I wanted, was for that character to die. NPCs, not player characters. Was for that character to die because it would tell an interesting story. And so I would create situations where the deck was stacked a little bit more in that situation. But it doesn't mean that if the dice rolls don't favor it, that I just start making random changes to ensure that it happens. To be perfectly honest, a lot of my favorite story points in any of the RPGs I've run have been when I have planned for one thing and either the players or the dice have caused something completely different to happen. And it creates an interesting story. Like, I enjoy that. I think that's interesting. And I don't think Abria does. I think she takes things personally, which is an extremely common thing. This is not me attacking Abria as a person. Taking things personally is unbelievably common. And I have seen it happen at tables that I have played at. Way back in the before times, during, I think it was the either first or second season of the D&D Adventures League. So this is first or second year of D&D 5th edition existing. We were playing a tier 2 adventure in the Tyranny of Dragons campaign. We were in the city of Flan, and the way that the adventure was supposed to go is there is this, I don't think they were a Cambion, but they were some kind of demon that has been working with this spellcaster who also happens to have a wyvern under their control that they use as a mount. And they're basically trying to help take over the city of Flan for this adult or ancient green dragon named like Vorgenshanks or something like that. It's a big dragon. It's a huge plot point for the Tyranny of Dragons. Eventually, the city of Flan falls to this dragon, and one of the adventures that you run later on is actually liberating the city from control of this dragon. So the way that this adventure was supposed to go is you sneak into the city of Flan and you have a confrontation with some guards or something that are working, or some lackeys that are working for the demon and the spellcaster. That I cannot remember their names anymore. And so the way this particular combat encounter was intended to work was the demon is like 30 feet up in the air on top of some roofs. And all he's supposed to do is he rains down ranged attacks until you kill all of the people down there. And because this is still a relatively low level, again, it's tier 2, but it's supposed to be for like level 5 characters. There really isn't a way for characters to get up to him. And it's specifically written in the rules that if they get the character down to a certain amount of hit points, the character dimension doors away, because the real place that you're supposed to kill him is in the final fight, because you have to fight the spellcaster on board her wyvern with this demon thing fighting with her. And it's supposed to be a very difficult fight to end this particular adventure. Well, I'm playing my Shadow Monk Aether. And at 6th level, Shadow Monks get the ability to Shadow Step. Basically, you go from one area of dim light or darkness to another area of dim light or darkness within 60 feet. And so I asked the Dungeon Master, I go, hey, you said that he's up on a roof, right? Yeah. And roofs, like, they have windows and stuff like that up there, right? Yeah. So there's got to be at least some shadows on the roof somewhere. Yeah, and the Dungeon Master goes, yeah, I can see that happening. It's like, okay, I'm going to Shadow Step up there. And he's perfectly fine with this at first. He goes, okay, you do that, because, again, this particular creature is not meant to be one-on-one fought. It's meant for the entire party to help fight him, and he's a rough dude to fight. So I go, okay, I run up there. That takes my bonus action, so I still have my action, which gives me 2 attacks. I go up, I attack, I hit. Monks don't do a ton of damage, especially not at level 6. But what they can do is Stunning Strike. And so I go, and I need a Constitution save from him. And he rolls really poorly, and he gets stunned. And then I yell down at the party, hey, everybody shoot him. He's a bad guy. And so they start ignoring all the dudes on the ground, and everyone goes range and starts attacking. But one of the fun things about being stunned is attack rolls against you have advantage. I keep him stunned, I think, only for 3 rounds. But I keep him stun locked for 3 rounds, and we kill him completely outright. The Dungeon Master looks panicked because now the final fight has just gotten different. But he's like, okay, that'll be perfectly fine. Well, because we have a very stealth-focused party, instead of just running into the docks area where this spellcaster is waiting on the back of a wyvern, we slowly sneak up, we get good checks, and we can see the wyvern and the spellcaster standing there, basically giving orders out and waiting for us to show up. So me and my buddy was playing a multi-classed fighter ranger rogue. It was a just completely broken multi-class that allowed him to just do shit tons of damage with sneak attack and stuff like that. And so what we decided to do, and he was ranged, I went and I cast Silence on the wyvern so that no one would hear what was going on. And he just lobbed and he attacked and then used Action Surge to get like 4 attacks off and downed the wyvern before it could even act. This is before initiative had been rolled. We basically got the surprise on them. Downs the wyvern. The lady's stuck on the wyvern, surrounded by an area of silence, so she can't cast spells. Because of that, the final really difficult combat of that adventure took less than a round. Because we took out her wyvern, which was the real difficult part about dealing with her, because she would be flying on the back of the wyvern, just raining down destruction, and then the wyvern itself would be attacking as well. We took that out before initiative was rolled. And then she couldn't move enough because she was stuck mounted on the wyvern and had to spend movement to get off of it. She couldn't move enough to get to a point where she could cast any spells, and we just focus fired her down. And then the rest of the minions in there were no problem for us. And so at the end of this thing, after we killed the wyvern and when she died, we didn't even finish fighting the minions. He goes, fuck it, you win. And we all got really pleased, and he was upset because it was a really cool combat encounter. It really was. And it was really well designed, and because of us killing, if we hadn't killed that demon thing before, none of that would have happened, because the demon itself would have been able to either hit me and get me to lose concentration on the silence spell, or would have been able to just fly in and save the spellcaster so that the spellcaster could continue to make our lives miserable. But because we killed a major part of the final encounter before it was supposed to happen, everything was just kind of broken. And he took it personally. He was upset for the rest of the day. So it's not that I've never seen a DM take things personally. It's not that I've never taken things personally. There have been situations where I have taken things personally when playing the D&D or other systems. And so it's not like this is some kind of personal attack against Aubrey or anything like that. However, the decision she made was unfair and punished the players for no reason. And then when she was asked to explain herself, which is a completely legitimate question to ask in that situation, she responded with, I can do what I want. Fuck you. That's not okay. Now, she was saying that because I'm relatively certain, this is me conjecturing. I do not know Abria. We've never talked. But I'm relatively certain the reason she did that because she was anticipating people attacking her for her ruling on Twitter. Because she knew it was going to happen. She was going to get in front of it and just respond with basically fight fire with fire. You want to attack me? I'm going to attack you first. Fuck you. And that's not a good way to deal with that. Because the only thing that it does is make the people that were already considering, the people that already were going to be complaining and attacking her for it, you have just given them a reason to attack you more. So you're not stopping the attacking that you were going to get. So it fails on that mark. The people that weren't going to attack her, that might have been defending her, some of those people are going to be offended that they have just been lumped in with these people that they don't like, and they're no longer going to defend her. And then the last group of people that are still going to defend her are now going to be even more incited because the person that they were defending has now gone on the offense. And anytime you go from defense to offense, that changes the opinion of the people that are following you, to the point where, defending yourself is considered noble. Attacking other people is considered aggressive. And so the only time it is okay to attack someone else when you're not just defending yourself is if attacking the person is necessary as a way to defend yourself. So you are still being aggressive. You are still going beyond the idea of I'm protecting myself to I'm actively attacking someone else for the sole purpose of defending myself. That changes how everyone views it, and now they're going to need to feel the need not just to defend you, but to attack your attackers. So there's nothing that happens there that makes the situation better. More people are angry. The attacks are going to be more vicious. More people are going to be attacking than would have before. And more people are getting caught in the crosshairs because you've just escalated this from a disagreement to an all-out battle. There isn't an upside to what Abria did. Other than it made her, I assume, it made her feel superior. Which is extremely common for bad decisions. The reason we make bad decisions is because in the moment they feel good. But as soon as you're out of the moment, they make you feel worse. Responding in anger, the reason people respond in anger is giving into your anger feels good in the moment because you're no longer fighting yourself. You are allowing yourself to do the things that you wanted to do. Despite the fact that it's the wrong thing to do, it feels good in the moment. Once you are out of the moment, you have to deal with the fact that you have done something that has made the situation worse. There is not a situation where giving into your anger is going to improve the situation. There are certain times where using your anger to strengthen your resolve can give you positive results. But there is a large difference between fury and righteous indignation. Righteous indignation is you getting upset because something truly wrong has happened and you use that anger to help you do the right thing. Fury is just you being angry and lashing out to give in to that anger. And that's what I feel like Abria did. She knew she was going to get questioned on this. I think she knew it was the wrong decision to make by the time the question was answered. And instead of admitting, you know what, that wasn't the right decision, because in this particular instance, if she had said, you know what, that was the wrong decision, it probably would have caused more problems than it solved. Because then people are going to go, well, if it was the wrong decision, then retcon it. Don't let this person... And it would have created even bigger fury. So she was in a bad position. She's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. She admit that she made the wrong choice. Things are going to go poorly for her. If she didn't admit that she made the wrong choice, things are going to go poorly for her. So she just went, fine, I'm not going to admit that I did anything wrong, and I'm going to get ahead of this. I'm going to attack them before they can attack me. And that was just a bad decision. Were I in the same situation where I made a judgment call and I realized afterwards it was the wrong judgment call, what I personally would do, and I am not Abria, I will never be Abria, her life is completely different than my life. So it is never okay to hold other people to the standards of, well, this is what I would have done in that situation. Because you don't know what was going through their mind. You don't know what has happened in their life to fuel their choices. So this is not me saying this is what Abria should have done or could have done. I don't know. What I'm saying, were I in that situation, the conversation probably would have gone like this. So, what are the rules? It would have gone, well, to be perfectly honest, I made that ruling because of this particular reason. You know, I figured that because he was so close, because I'm going to make up shit. I don't know if this is actually what happened. I'm literally making up shit. So don't correct me and say, well, that isn't how it went. This is me making up shit. Because, again, I never would have made the decision that Abria made because it doesn't make sense to me. But let's say I did that decision. I'm going to say, well, to be perfectly honest, the reason I made that call in that moment was Dorian's brother's character was so close. Like maybe they were grappling or something, but it was so close to the character that even with you getting a 26 on your attack roll, there really wasn't a way for you to be able to hit this target and not hit him. They were so incredibly intertwined in this combat that there just really wasn't a way for you to not do that. And unfortunately, your character wouldn't really have realized that until afterwards. And if there was any pushback, it'd be like, okay, you know what? You make a valid point. It's the decision that I made. And it's the decision that we're going to keep going forward. I understand your issues with the decision. And I'm more than happy to have more of a discussion about this, not during the game. And that's generally what I do, is if I do make a decision that the players are really, really unhappy about, I go, hey, I get it. You're upset. Let's finish this session. And then after everything's done, You and I can sit down, we can have a conversation about this. And if it does turn out that it was just the wrong decision, the next time we play the game, I will say, hey, I made a wrong decision. We're going to retcon a little bit of stuff. This is what actually happened. I've done it before. It's not that big a deal. So in a situation where I had done the exact thing that Aubrey had done, that's probably how I would have approached it. Would be, hey, I get what you're saying. I've already made the decision. So let's finish this session. And then you and I can have a conversation when we don't have the entire party here where we can kind of hash this out, okay? Again, I really, really think that what Abria did was actively the wrong decision. It did nothing but make things worse. And I think it is kind of a reflection of just her DMing style. I don't think she's a very good dungeon master. I think she's a fine game master when she's running a more rules light system that allows her a little bit more control. But I don't think she does well with people that understand a complex rule system. Or at least in this particular instance, understand a rule system better than she does. Again, it's not that I don't think Aubrey doesn't understand 5th edition. I think in this particular instance, she didn't understand the full ramifications of what she was doing. And when she was called out on it, instead of admitting, hey, I made a judgment call, it might have been the wrong call, but it's the call I'm making, she decided to attack people for it. And it's not okay. It's a childish thing to do. And this is, again, not me calling Aubrey a childish. I'm saying from an emotional maturity standpoint, it is a very common thing for people that are not very emotionally mature to do. Instead of admitting wrong, you just attack the person that's attacking you. We see it in politics constantly. And the vast majority of our federal representatives and senators are older than fucking dirt. But it was a very immature thing to do. It was the wrong decision to make. And whatever she did after it, again, it's very, very possible that she was able to patch things up and nobody has any hard feelings. Or it's also equally as possible that they are lying through their teeth about what they feel about it simply because they don't want to create more drama, which is another completely acceptable way to deal with a situation like this. Again, the situation shouldn't exist because Abria fucked up. However, once the fuck up is done, the fuck up is done. And if Abria is not willing to retcon it for whatever reason, then you can be bitter and mad and make a big stink about it. Or you can just agree that, okay, you've done something I don't agree with. We're going to move on. I want to continue playing this game, so I'm going to suck it up and say that there's nothing wrong. I don't think that's the greatest way to deal with it, because what can happen is once that happens once, it can happen again and again, and it starts to build resentment, and eventually can end campaigns because the players start getting so resentful at the game master that they're like, fuck this shit, I don't want to do this anymore. I constantly feel like I'm being punished by the GM. GM should not have unlimited power. They need to follow the rules just like the players, and in this instance, Abria didn't. So yeah, I wanted to try and talk about the kind of larger issue of the idea of when you're making rulings, you have to understand all of the aspects of it. And DMs make bad rulings. I've made bad rulings. Everyone's made bad rulings. The way you react to those bad rulings really says a lot about you as a DM. And the way that Aubrey reacted to this is just not okay. I'm not going to try and make it all fluffy and nice and going, well, she could have. No. The decision she made to randomly change a first level spell as a way to punish the players is not okay. And then when being called out for it, saying, I can do what I want, fuck you, is also not okay. She made 2 mistakes. Do I understand the exact reason why she made the mistakes? No. I can theorize as much as I want, but I don't know what was going through her head. And in her head, this is probably the best way to deal with it. I don't think it was okay. I think it was immature, it was childish, and it caused a lot more problems than it solved. And I would hope that the people that watch my content would understand that the reason I'm talking about this is not to chastise Abria. It is to inform people that this is an example of what not to do and give you other ways to deal with that. Again, there were so many other things that she could have done, even if it was simply, hey, it happened because of situations that your player characters are unaware of, and in order to kind of not break the immersion of the campaign, I'm not going to tell you as player characters why it worked the way it did, but there is a rule for why it worked that way. Or saying, hey, I screwed up, maybe we should retcon it, or hey, I screwed up, but you know what? The damage is done, we're going to move forward. All of those would have been completely acceptable ways to do it. Saying fuck you to the audience was not an acceptable way to do this. It's what a child does. So, anyway, I hope you guys at least got something out of this. Again, I don't tend to cover a lot of Critical Role drama simply because it's not something that I like doing. I don't like covering drama, but this is something that I have specific experience in. And I've seen other dungeon masters make the same mistakes that Abria does. If for whatever reason, Abria, you're watching this, the only reason I don't use your last name is I keep mispronouncing it, and I don't want to insult you. I do hold you in the utmost respect. I would use a formal title to address you. I'm having a really hard time pronouncing your last name is all it is. So to avoid doing that, I'm just going to call you by your first name, but I still absolutely respect you. If for whatever reason you're watching this, you need to make better life choices because there's significantly better things you could be doing than watching me. But I sincerely appreciate the watch. If you are watching this, understand that while yes, you made a bad decision, you are not a bad person, and you are not a bad DM as a whole. You did something that a bad DM would do, and then instead of fixing it, you doubled down and attacked the people that were calling you out for it. That is something that a bad DM does, and if you continue doing that, I would classify you as a bad DM. But you don't. A lot of the other things that you do are really, really cool and amazing, and it is obvious that you put a lot of work and effort into running these games. And I understand that sitting in that chair is humbling. It is overwhelming. It is probably one of the scariest things a game master can do currently. So this is not me saying that somehow you were a lesser person or something because you buckled under the pressure. But what you did wasn't okay. And you need to admit that bare minimum to yourself. It would be better if you admit it to the cast as well. And then you need to take steps to ensure that it doesn't happen again. You need to learn from this. I've said this many, 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 many times before. Success is a horrible teacher. It will convince you you are good at things that you aren't, and that you are bad at things that you aren't bad at. It will lie to you. It will cheat you. It will constantly make you look dumb. Failure is a phenomenal teacher. Failure will let you know exactly what you don't know and will ensure that you understand that you did something wrong. And because of that, you can learn from failure so much more than you ever learned from success. What happened here was a failure. I think everyone involved can understand that. It's up to you whether you want to use that failure as a way to learn or as a way to reinforce your bad habits. For everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.